Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass podcast, a show where we talk about movies and well, more movies. I'm Dman, joined by CP. And CP, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit today. I have a little bit of a cold, and I have, I guess, like a dry throat and a little bit of a runny nose. So that's not conducive to good podcast audio.
Oh, no, dude. We should probably just call up a co-host right now and just have someone sub in for you, and you should hop on the bench.
Well, we will totally kind of talk about bringing some guests on because we got some comments after our podcast last week, which was great. We got a great response to our return episode, which was a lot of fun, and I was glad to be podcasting again. So let's go ahead and jump into our shout-outs and take a look at what people had to say. Joe Rubio, who I actually saw this weekend at a graduation party, he was excited that we were back, saw us on social media, and liked the topics we were covering. And Joe, I just wanted to say thanks for listening, man. Glad to hear that you're enjoying the show. And if you have any new topics or anything in mind that you'd like to hear us talk about, let us know. Yay. At Giraffes65, so Ivor said,
dude,
great
Ivor
to have
hit you up. That's what you asked for.
Yes, Ivor is back, and he said, great to have you two back. Did I miss your Guardians 3 review? Which, unfortunately, no, you did not miss it. We have not discussed it. I'm actually going to see it this week, so we will be talking about it, but it won't be on this episode. So I'm trying to catch up on everything Marvel so that Ivor, you and I can have a true deep dive and possibly even bring you on to talk about phases 5 and 6, which I know they're releasing some scheduling stuff coming up soon. So we'll probably talk about that in the future as well. Brad Banaka, who actually has been a guest on this podcast, said, welcome back. So thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Hugo Trash said, nice episode, subbed on YouTube. So Hugo, thank you for listening. I'm glad you enjoyed the show, and thank you so much for subscribing. That's awesome. Trisha Peterson said, good episode, food for thought. We appreciate you listening too. Glad that you found the episodes and enjoyed the show. So hopefully the topics continue to be more food for thought. At TGBTB, Brian Ten Bosch said, still would love to hop on a cast sometime. So here we go, CP, here we go. Anthony Torres mentioned he would like to come on the show. And I had a couple other people basically say, hey, what does it take to get on your podcast? So I wanted to talk to you about this on air. Guys, thank you so much for your interest for coming on the show. And we're going to have to figure out, are we going to, start doing 3 hosts and have different people coming on the show every week? How do we do this?
I don't know. Because originally when we were doing guests, we were bringing guests on in person. That was...
Yeah, right now we're on a Zoom call.
But yeah, if you've noticed, it's been a long time since D-Man and I have actually been on an episode together of this show. So,
physically in the same room.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could probably Zoom someone else in. I don't know. We could give it a shot. Just, I guess the first thing I would say to you guys is if you are interested in coming on the show, let us know what some of the topics are that you'd be interested in discussing. Topics, films, anything that's on your mind, news. That would be a great start because then we can take a look at the episode and see how we might want to structure it and see if we can get 3 people to work on the Zoom call, because that would be really cool to have you guys on.
And if you really want to come on and talk about how you hate James Gunn and the Guardians movies, then clearly we'll move you to the front of the line. So no worries.
But thank you guys. I'm glad that you were excited. We're back. And yes, we would love to work with you guys and hopefully be able to bring you on as, a guest or a guest host for the show. That would be really fun. So at Kelly Jacqueline. So Jack said, when are you all going to see The Little Mermaid for me? Report back. And I'm reporting back, CP. I actually did go see The Little Mermaid, and we are going to talk about that in a few minutes. And then finally, my mom commented. She said, I love you, which I love you too, Mom. Thank you. She said, I love your and Christian's podcast. So she's talking about our topics and how they're relevant for today. She also said, you and I might want to talk about some things from our life, which sounds like my mom just wants me to call her more. I think she just wants to hear what's going on. So I don't know, maybe we'll try to work in some of that as well and talk about, a couple of the things that are just happening in our lives. Maybe we'll do a little kind of a rewind segment with D-Man and CP at the top where we just talk about life. I don't know. That's for another day. So CP, keep that in mind as well. Did you have any shout outs?
Just to the city of Chicago. Thanks you guys for just being awesome.
Ooh, we're going to talk about that as well. CP, before I throw it over to you, because I know you have a couple really cool things that you wanted to talk about. And one of them actually is just like a part of your life, which is great. I did go see The Little Mermaid in theaters, and I have to report back on my thoughts. So we're going to do a little.
I did not go see The Little Mermaid. I was actually invited to go, and I said I don't want to. So
well, we're going to do a little movie remake time segment with D-Man here, because before I went to go see The Little Mermaid, the night before I watched the animated version.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah, I made sure that I, saw both and saw them in both proximity, in close proximity to each other, so I could give an honest take on the movie Remake Time. Now, what was interesting about doing a live action version of The Little Mermaid was actually, to me, it was the scenes when Ariel ends up, she gets legs and she's basically a human and she's on land. She loses her voice and she's doing, trying to get Love's True Kiss, and she's, obviously in love with Eric. So what was interesting, I felt, with the live action version was that when they do that segment of the story, I thought it worked really well in live action. They were able to add more dialogue. They were able to act. You could feel chemistry between the actors, which you can't really get in animated version. You know what I mean? So they were doing like in that segment of the movie, I felt it was actually a little bit better in live action. I thought it contributed something that we didn't get in the animated version, and that the live action version actually, I when it was at its weakest, I felt it was when it was just like a straight shot for shot remake of the animated version, which in that case, I would say is just superior. Like that's the classic. I also think, kind of like we talked about before about the Disney remakes, you look at something like The Lion King, where I told you, I was like, I think it's just jarring to have like, photorealistic lions like talking. I think that's like bread and butter for animated, movies. And so, some of the underwater stuff, the mermaid stuff, obviously Under the Sea, the song when they do it, like all of that, I think is better animated. I think it lends itself to that art form where it feels like they're kind of like trying to force it here just because that's what was in the animated one and it's got to make it, or why are we doing all this? So
Interesting. On that same note, what did you think about the character Scuttle in the live action version?
I liked Scuttle. I mean, I know it was Scuttle was voiced by was it Aquafina?
I think so. But my question was, did a talking seagull hold up in the way that it does in an animated one?
I don't
Really
see,
scene.
again, I don't think it does hold up. Like obviously there's Sebastian, there's Flounder, there's Scuttle, and they're all in the film. I just think it just works better in animation to me, I think.
Gotcha.
But I do think they were able to, there's quite a few laughs that come from those three characters. They're probably the comic relief, which is true in the animated version as well. But they're kind of the comic relief throughout, and they do a pretty good job of making you laugh and keeping things light and moving. But I did want to point out a couple things. So the songs, I think obviously, I think her name is Halle Bailey. Is that her name? That played Ariel. I thought she did great. Obviously, she has the voice to carry those songs. Sounded fantastic. They're actually very close to the animated versions of the song. They don't
Really?
deviate too much. Yeah.
Okay.
So there is, there's slight changes and variations in either pitch or, you hear Under the Sea, and they're it sounds a little bit different, but generally speaking, like it's pretty close. Even,
Especially
like
since we're used to hearing these songs a certain way for the past, 30 something years.
yeah, but it works. I mean, it was fine. They did add a couple songs, which they've done in other movies as well, like Aladdin.
Yeah.
And I think even Lion King might have had an extra song or two. I don't remember. But yeah, they had an extra one. I think the one Eric has a song, which I don't know if it was necessary to have that song, but I thought it kind of worked. And then they did another one that I can't, it was honestly, sorry, music writers, but it was kind of forgettable.
Now,
So
my understanding is they actually took a song out of the original movie too.
if they did, I'm not sure which one that is.
I heard that
Oh,
the
you know what?
whole chef song where the chef's
Yes,
trying
yes.
to
I was gonna
chop
say
up Sebastian is not in
that
there.
whole scene is cut. They don't even do that scene. So that character, the chef, if there was anything, I mean, maybe there's like a slight nod to him when they're like on land, like doing some shots, like they might do a nod, but they just remove that entire scene. Instead, they
Interesting.
have, yeah, they have like Ariel and Eric go kind of on like a day date to like a beach, like little shopping area that's a little bit different. That's not in the
Like
movie.
Seaport Village.
Yeah, I felt like, and honestly, I think it made the movie stronger because instead of opting for the chef and Sebastian scene with the knife and all that, they opted more to focus like on the love story, and I think that worked
Chemistry.
better. Yeah, I thought it actually did improve that segment of the film. So, but yeah, the songs were cool. The weird thing is like obviously they're remakes, and it's weird because it doesn't feel like you're gonna get a smash like you got with even animated Frozen. What was it? Let It Go or Don't Talk About Bruno from uh what's that
Yeah.
movie? I can't remember
Encanto.
the name. Encanto, yeah. So like it doesn't feel like they're gonna get a smash hit of it. I mean, they've already done it back in like '89 with the animated version. They did get Under the Sea and Part of Your World.
Mhm.
So like those were already hits at 30 years ago or whatever. It's just weird because yeah, it doesn't feel like there's anything that really kind of stood out in that way because it's a remake. So, the new additions, while fine, I don't think they got any smash hits.
Gotcha.
And finally, the runtime for this movie was fairly long. It ran over 2 hours,
Wow.
which now I know obviously like, hey, Star Wars is 2 hours. Most movies can hit that, but we're talking about generally speaking, a movie made for kids. And that's why animated movies tend to be, closer to like an hour and a half,
Yeah.
90 minutes with their runtime. So I was a little surprised that it was as long as it was. I also wanted to just comment on some of the casting. So in this case, they had Javier Bardem as King Triton. They
Mhm.
had Melissa McCarthy as Ursula, and I thought they played their roles fine. I mean, one of the things that was really interesting, like you can't like not notice it, is like all of Ariel's sisters at the beginning like assemble for some sort of like performance, and it's the same in the animated version or whatever, where Ariel doesn't show up and King Triton's all pissed, but like all of his daughters are like completely like they are every single race that like exists. So it's funny because like in my mind, I was like, dang, King Triton has literally been around the world. And I was like, can't not help but think that. So that was funny. I thought Melissa McCarthy really seemed to relish the role. I thought she was having a lot of fun as that character, and she probably seemed like she was having the most fun, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
And I did not, however, think that the climactic battle at the end with Ursula, it honestly felt like it just came and went. And
Oh,
I thought,
really?
yeah, they totally blew that. So it didn't feel climactic. Like, I mean, obviously we all already know what happens, but it literally like they don't add anything new to it. And it happens so fast. Like they just blow by it.
That's
Where I feel
weird.
like in the animated version, it's like when she like grows big. I mean, it's very, very intimidating. She's very scary and like all of that. I thought the animated version, climactic ending was better. And then I was also sad at the end that they did not have like that kind of cheesy rainbow. I was like, come on, you went all the way to here and you didn't do the rainbow. Yeah, movie remake time. Now, what's my thoughts? I do prefer the animated version. This is almost universally true for all of the live action remakes. I almost always prefer the animated version. And in this case, like I said, I do prefer the animated version overall. Although I really liked how they reworked the, second third of the film, the love story, I thought was much stronger. I liked the chemistry between the actors. I thought they really had something. And it definitely made me think that this section was better in live action, which I can't say for a lot of the live action remakes.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I did enjoy it though. I was surprised. I didn't know if I would like it. And for the most part, like people had a lot of fears that like the underwater sequences would be super dark or like it would be hard to see. And I didn't really get that vibe at all. It seemed fine to me.
Okay.
So
No, that's good. I'm glad.
yeah, I enjoyed it. So I would actually, if you like the original, and if you're going in with fairly not low expectations, but don't necessarily expect it to beat the animated classic, you can have a good time. It's a good date night, or take your kids.
All right.
So
Well, Jack, there you go. That's the review. I'm obviously not going to see it, so that's about all you're
all
going to
right.
get on this show regarding the Little Mermaid. But
Well,
if
ironically, I'm the one that has like the dry voice and stuffy nose, and I'm the one that's been talking this whole time. So CP, I want to throw it over to you because I know you have a couple topics here that you want to dive into, and I'm actually very, very excited to hear about because these are two topics that we had on our idea list for this topics for this episode, but we did not dive into them in our pre-production meeting, I said, hold the, all the surprises and let's talk about it on air. So throw it over to you.
First things first, last Friday wrapped up the film festival that I was coordinating, the Collaboration Filmmakers Challenge. And Dman, it was pretty awesome. We got a lot of really great film entries. It was down to the wire. I did not get the finalists from the judges until pretty much 10:30 the night before the festival. One of the judges, wow. I don't know what their deal was, took them 5 days to submit their final tallies to me, because we do it with different tiers of voting. And so
I got
final judges, and I'm like, you have like 15 films to watch. Just give me
the 3 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, so it's not that long. It's the type of thing that you can do in an hour and a half. And I said, hey, I need you to give me your reviews in terms of actors nominations and in terms of points that you would award each film, so we can calculate who the winners are. Mm-hmm. And this one judge just took forever. They're an agent, so maybe that was the problem. Agents give everybody a headache.
Nice.
But we finally got it and ended up. So other than crunching everything last minute, film festival went great. We had some amazing films screened. We gave away some awesome prizes.
What were some of the prizes? I mean, normally they're pretty good. I mean, sometimes it's cash, right? But sometimes it's like equipment rentals.
We gave away $20,000 in cash.
Wow.
We gave away.
That's really good.
Yeah, we gave away a few subscriptions to DaVinci Resolve Pro. We gave away a lot of gift certificates to filmmaking resources like lensrental.com, a couple other brands like B-Script, Beach Tech actually sent us equipment we gave away. I think probably the two coolest prizes. One was from Blackmagic Design. They gave someone a 2-week rental of a 12K camera.
Wow.
So
that would be, I mean, that's such an opportunity to take advantage of that. Like, what do you do? Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
You could, if you played your cards right, you could shoot a feature film.
Yeah, that's awesome.
2 weeks with a 12K camera. I mean, you can make anything you want, especially since that 12K model is something that is widely used in Hollywood for feature film production. The other one that was a great project was an actual development deal. A production company gave someone $5,000, and it's like $5,000 for you to sit down and write a screenplay, make a pitch deck for a project that we would like to later turn into a feature film. And that's pretty cool too.
Wow.
I don't know how else you get a deal like that.
So, yeah, I was going to say, you don't hear about like development deals like that a lot. Normally you're pitching before any money's ever exchanged and somebody's agreeing to, at least in good faith review whatever you pitch.
Yeah.
Most of the time they call it the elevator pitch. Like, you just got to try to do what you can with what you got.
So it was a lot of fun. Granted, there were hiccups. There's always hiccups anytime you put on any sort of event. The major one was we actually had projection issues in the middle, right between when we screened the films. We brought the judges out to talk about and give their assessment of the film, some, constructive feedback to filmmakers, things like that, talked about what they really liked. And in that time, we had projection issues. So it delayed us from actually presenting the results. But other than that, I thought it went pretty well.
Oh, you're keeping everybody in suspense, CP. I mean, I do remember I've actually attended some of these film festivals in the past, the CFC, and they've always been a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, even the hiccups that we had at one time, it was like, we were trying to do a live feed and that ended up becoming like the audio wasn't very good on the live feed, and we were trying to figure out how do we sync that or fix that, and it just became like a hassle. I mean, like you said, I'm sure there's always hiccups. While we're talking about CFC, I did want to give a shout out to our good friend Connor Geary, who actually submitted a film to the CFC, and I had a chance to see it, and I really enjoyed it. So Connor, even though I don't know if your film was screened, I don't know how all that worked out, I think it was really impressive that you submitted a film. And I mean, just your friend to friend, I enjoyed it. So
well, that was very nice of you, D-Man.
I was going to ask you before we
Yeah.
move on from the CFC, I did want to know, were there any standout films? Was there anything that you thought was really creative or maybe a little bit different? Because I know in the past, there were a couple movies that really stood out. Like I remember one, it was these characters had someone was like locked in the trunk of their car and they're basically talking about like murdering them, but it's like a comedy.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. There's
really funny. And then there was another one where they did it like almost like a live news feed, and they were like going around as like the apocalypse was happening or something. It was like kind of, and that
yeah.
too was like a comedy,
Yeah.
but very funny. And then wasn't there one like werewolf or like, oh, what was it? It was like crazy. It looked like an old like slasher film, but it too was kind of a comedy. It's like an action movie. I don't remember. But anyway,
Yeah.
those all stood out. I wondered if there was any standouts for this film festival.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of really, really good ones. I'm trying to think of off the top of my. I mean, the film that won the development deal and kind of stole the show, really swept the prizes, was this film called Shared Spaces, and it was a comedy about, pretty much the world's worst roommate, and it was totally entertaining and it was a good laugh. There were a couple
Nice.
other really creative films. There was this film, Rough Cut, that I really loved. There was actually one of my favorite films ended up not making the final cut.
Oh,
There were
bummer.
two that I really liked. There was this one, it was a comedy. It was kind of like a mockumentary about a guy whose job was like a professional guy who went like he was hired to go to improv shows and kind of cue up comedians.
Okay.
And I just thought it was a creative aspect. And then the other one was totally out there. It was very much like an art house style film. And it was supposed to be a film, like a found footage type film of the
Okay.
police interviews. And
Those
it
are always
was
fun.
of someone conducting the interview that does not exist with Lee Harvey Oswald after he was caught
Oh,
for assassinating Kennedy. Because if you know anything about the Kennedy assassination, there's all these different stories about that people provided about interviewing Oswald, but part of what fuels the conspiracy is the actual interview itself was never recorded. It's all secondhand through people's own reporting of it. So I thought that
okay.
was kind of an interesting idea for a film festival to
Yeah, that
integrate,
is interesting.
what happened to this missing film and then play that. So it was kind of cool.
That is neat. And I know, at least in the past, you could probably speak to this. They will upload all of the films to YouTube. So just to our listeners, if you're interested, keep an eye on it. You can just go to collaboration. What is it?
Collaboration
Collaboration.
challenge
Yeah,
on
and you
YouTube,
just
and you
type,
should
yeah,
find it.
and they'll probably update or upload all the films, at least the ones that qualified for the actual film festival. Although I think in the past they did upload every entry. In past years it's happened. So I don't know, maybe those will end up there. And if you're just interested in checking some of those out, or even past entries which are there now, you can go there and see.
And maybe we'll throw up a link to it as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll be sure to share.
So the real excitement came after the CFC. Now, as you guys know, I made a shout out to Chicago. So just because I really like drama and complicating things beyond the point that they need to be complicated, I was wrapping up a film festival. It was supposed to end at about 10:30 on Friday. We had planned an after party a few blocks away. So the film festival took place in the Harmony Gold, which is a theater on Sunset Boulevard, kind of next to the Editors Guild and a couple other things.
Cool.
And a few blocks away, we planned at the corner of Sunset and Vine, we planned our after party at this pretty cool bar called The Well.
Nice.
That was supposed to go from 11 to 2.
Oh,
Then,
dang, you guys partied into the night.
well, I mean, this is Hollywood, and this is when networking takes place at all the after parties. So
yeah, it's true.
we took it seriously. Now, being the genius that I was, I planned a flight to Chicago at 5:15 in the morning.
Oh God.
So I knew it was going to be rough. But since I live in San Diego, I figured I will fly out of LAX. I'm already going to be in LA.
Okay.
The stuff
Very
I was doing
wise.
in Chicago was going to be the weekend. And so when I came back, I was going to land in beautiful San Diego, right?
Okay.
So you can already see the complication here, which is I could not drive to the airport because, well, I was flying out of one city and flying back into a different city.
And I don't know how hard it is to get an Uber at, like, I'm assuming 3 in the morning.
Well, the
in
other problem
Hollywood?
is it's Hollywood. And if you know anything about Hollywood, taxis do not like picking people up in Hollywood. And it's can be sometimes hard to get an Uber because at that time of night, everybody knows you are just a drunk a-hole. So I
Be
knew,
clown. I don't want it.
yeah, and I knew that was going to be problematic enough. So what I did was shout out to our friend Steven. He was coming to
Hey,
the
shout
event
out, Steven.
to be
Okay.
our photographer anyway. So I was like, he was generous enough to agree to give me a ride from San Diego, where we both live, up to the screening in Hollywood. So I was like,
Okay.
great, I have a ride there. And then he said, since I'm going back to San Diego, I will take you and drop you off at the airport. It's on the
Damn.
way.
CP, that's really nice of him. That's amazing.
I got really lucky, but I'm really dumb and I didn't follow his advice. So instead, met another one of my buddies, producer friend of ours, came to the film festival. He said, "Are you going to the after party?" I said, "I have to go to the airport." He said, "I'll take you to the after party. You know, we can go grab something at one of the diners and then I'll take you to the airport so you're not waiting around all night in LAX just waiting." So I was like, perfect. So
Okay. I mean,
we drove.
yeah.
Once everything wrapped to the festival, we went to the after party together. After party was great. Tons of filmmakers. It was a great time to just connect, talk to people about their projects. Well, so before that, I took my bags, I put them in his car. We went to the after party. Well, he came running in and says, "Hey, there's a problem. I order my food. I'm finally about to sit down and eat." Because after all, I was running the festival. I didn't get any of the catered food, nothing like that. So I'm about to sit down
Oh,
and eat.
what a bummer.
And
Yeah.
he comes back and he says, "We got a problem." And I said, "What's up?" And he said, "My car has been towed." Now,
Well, that's very Hollywood.
if you can imagine,
Nowhere to park. Yeah.
his car was towed. His car had his wallet and his phone
Oh my God. Who
and
leaves their wallet and phone in the
my
car?
bags.
You're
So
screwed.
and now I'm thinking, how am I supposed to go on my flight without my bags, which are in lockup? So we ran over to the West Hollywood police station to find out where the car was towed to.
Now, how do they know? Like, do the towing companies like log this somewhere that
Yeah, they have to report it. And apparently they have to have an officer come and kind of like make notes about the vehicle.
okay? Because I was like, how? I mean, I think about, sometimes the only way I've ever known is I know where I parked my car, and there'll be like a sign that will basically say like this is a tow zone, and here's the contact info or whatever. But like Hollywood, I'm assuming who knows where your car went.
Well, the crazy thing was this. He parked at a meter, which my understanding, and someone has to tell me if I'm wrong. I thought meters in LA were free after 10 p.m.
Mm.
And so this was 11:30 at night. He put money in it anyway. So between the time that the meter expired and his car was towed, it wasn't more than 15 minutes. So I was blown away by all that. First of all, I was like, okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Normally
I'm not sure.
it's very clear what a tow zone is. And I was like, that seems weird to me. Point is, car's gone. We're at the police station. They say, okay, 6 miles away is the tow lot. So
Okay.
I have to run back. I flag down someone in the bar from the party and I say, "Hey, can you take us to the tow lot? Can you drop us off?" I don't know if you remember my friend Dave Panner. So Dave was there and he said,
Yeah, I remember Dave.
I'll take
Oh
you
yeah.
over to the tow lot." So he drives us over there. We get inside. Dude,
It's not there.
no, it was there. But the guy at the window was very insistent that property pickup was between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. only.
Wow, they wouldn't release it, huh?
Only.
Why are
Oh,
towing
because they're the
companies?
servants of Satan.
Yeah, like why are they make it so hard? And you're like, God, I'm already just paying you money for my own car.
right?
Like,
And that was the thing. And I'm like, look, he's planning to pay to get out. He's like, I'm not even here to discuss getting my car out. I'm here to get his bags out so he can fly out for 5:15. The guy's like, "I'm sorry, there's nothing that I could do." So,
but like isn't that ridiculous? It's like, bro, let me into my own car. Like, what are you talking about? And like, I get it because if they let you get into the car, hypothetically, you could start the car and like
yeah,
try to take the car. But at the same time, you're like, I mean, come on. If we're just being reasonable right now, like I need to get my bag. We can do that, right? Like there's no reason I shouldn't be able to go to my car and get crap out of it. Like what the hell?
right. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 15% battery on my phone. I'm in the middle of Hollywood. It is now 2 o'clock in the morning. I do not have bags for a flight, and I'm leaving in 3 hours and 15 minutes.
And you're supposed to be at LAX. I mean, I know it's early, so you're probably okay with security at that time, but generally they say what, LAX like almost 2 hours before?
Yeah, because LAX is just, there's so many people going through it all the time.
Yeah.
So, dude, I was freaking out. I was like, I actually don't know how I'm getting out of this one. This is gonna be a real head scratcher. So we ended up like, and I mean, you know how these tow guys are. They just like literally, you have to be the a-hole of a-holes to take these jobs because they are like the most like, well, that's just the policy. There's nothing we can do. And I'm like,
I know, but the crazy part is like they will like you can like bribe them with cash.
oh, that's what I had to do.
Yeah, like you can be like, all right, well, what if I give you $200? I remember like I had to do that once, and I was like, you're such a fucking asshole. After I got my car, I was like, so you could have done it the whole time.
No, that's it. And so
Stupid.
I thankfully, because I was traveling, I had cash. So I literally had to just start putting 50s on the counter
Oh my God.
until he decided to call the police so that they could quote unquote escort me to his vehicle so then I could get out my property. So any guess how much I ended up having to pay?
I hope not more than $200.
Oh, more than $200, my friend.
300?
More than 300.
Wow. How much?
320 to get my bag. That's almost the cost of my flight.
Wow. That's wild, dude. That's like, to me, that's gross. I can't even believe. I mean, the cops should have arrested that guy.
Right? So
when they showed up, not escort you, they should have been like, this is robbery. So like, what the hell?
Then he calls the cops. And then this is where it gets even more complicated because now cops are there. So this all has to be done by the book, right? They need to take statements. They need to take CIDs. They need to log what is there so that they can put that in their report. And the problem was this: the driver did not have his ID.
Yeah, it's in the car.
Did not have his phone. More importantly, the driver was driving his wife's car, whose name the vehicle was under.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, I am not getting my bags. Like, it doesn't matter. I just paid all this money. I cannot, the cops are not going to let me get it out of my car. What am I going to do? So despite the fact that he had the key, he's like, well, I have the key. And they're like, well, that doesn't mean, you could have borrowed the car. You could have stolen the car. You don't have anything that proves to us that this is your vehicle. So luckily I said, I have some stuff in my bag that has my name on it. And he said, if it does, he said, then I'll go get your bag out. Like, we'll get your bag. And if you can prove to me that it's your bag, then at least I can say that that is your property from the vehicle. So I got super lucky because what I did is I ended up printing off my itinerary for the flight just to have it in case. And I put it in the front pocket of my suitcase. And so that was good enough for the police officer. But you know what pisses me off the most?
No.
I was going to Chicago, dude. So I brought one of the Cubs World Series hats that I have.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I got to the car, it was stolen.
No way. Dude, this was just bad.
Oh, it was a bad day. So then I finally got my car. My bag. I was out $300. It was getting close. So, the real killer on this, D-Man, that there's like two things I hate in the world. And one of them is Uber. And I was forced to Uber to LAX despite all my principles. And I felt like a sellout.
Well, hopefully that Uber wasn't too expensive. I don't know how much they run that late at night.
No, it wasn't. It honestly wasn't that bad. It was about $45, but obviously no one's driving around LA.
Damn, dude. So you were down the night almost probably close to like $400.
Yeah, $400 just because I was unlucky. So then I got to LAX. I was starving. Obviously, I got through bags. I got through security. I had 15 minutes to get to board my plane. So I'm still hungry. I've been starving. I haven't eaten anything. I'm looking for something. There's nothing open at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I know. At the airport's like everything's shut down.
Carl's Jr. So I'm like, I guess I got to do Carl's Jr. So I go into Carl's Jr.
Western bacon?
Yeah, I ordered the Western bacon meal, which is probably the best thing you can get at Carl's Jr. But
hopefully that was at least comfort food.
Not nice. My God. It took them so long to make my Western bacon burger that I had to leave it on the counter and go get on my flight.
Why would it take them so long to make a Western bacon?
This is fast food. I'm like, isn't this all you guys do?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a burger patty, it's onion rings, which are deep fried. That takes all of 10, for
Well,
onions.
all I can figure is this, because there were a couple other people waiting around. Like there weren't
What
that
was it?
many. There's
Bacon,
maybe
cheese, and barbecue
it,
sauce? Like,
I think it must be that they just opened and literally had none of the food ready. We're heating up the
oh,
grills,
okay.
and
That
so
makes more sense.
I think it's just that it actually took them. They had to get all the food prep ready. So I was like,
It was just bad timing for CP.
oh, dude, I was dying. By the time I got to Chicago, I was so hungry. I'm like, I haven't eaten in like 18
Well,
hours now.
hopefully the rest of your trip then went much smoother, and hopefully you got to enjoy Chicago. I noticed you. I know we have it on our calendar, but you said while you were in Chicago, it was the anniversary of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Well, yeah. So when I landed Saturday, it was the anniversary of the theatrical release of Ferris Bueller. So I was like, what a fitting day to be exploring Chicago and seeing the sights and, just soaking up all the greatness that the city of Chicago is, because it is clearly my favorite city. And it was a lot of fun to be there. And it was perfect weather.
I gotta ask, Chicago dogs and deep dish pizza. Did you get any? And hopefully it was totally worth it.
Oh, dude, well, come on. Why would I not? My hotel was actually right next to a Lou Malnati's, so of course I went and got some Lou's.
Lou Malnati's is awesome.
Best pizza place in Chicago. I went and I got a Chicago dog. It was not I either go to like Portillo's or I go to
that's where I normally go.
Devil Dogs, or there's this one spot right on the street that actually makes some really good. And I didn't go to either of those. I tried a new spot and it was okay. It was not the best, but I mean, an okay Chicago dog is still an incredible hot dog.
Fair enough. And did you get to do anything like the river walk or go see Navy Pier or, do any sort of like, Chicago touristy things?
Oh, dude, we're on the river walk. I actually did the boat tour of the.
So you were on the river.
Yeah, I went on the river.
Oh, cool.
Went to Millennium Park, saw the Bean. They had a music fest. Checked that out. Went to the Architectural Museum.
Did you meet up with Drew? Should we give him a shout out?
No, we should not, because despite me being in Chicago and telling him I was going to be there, he actually ignored me.
Wow. So we'll give him a shun. I don't know. I'm trying to think like what's the opposite of a shout out.
I was a little disappointed in him.
A little miffed.
But otherwise, I mean, it's hard to have a bad time in Chicago. As you've spent many times there yourself, it's always a fun city with a great energy, so much to see and do.
Well, I think that's really neat. You actually had a hotel downtown because, being from the Midwest, I have family out there. So when I go back, I visit the city, but I often, stay with my grandparents or my, Aunt Mary Ellen, or I might visit the city before I go to the airport, but I don't stay downtown. And I have really, I think only 2 or 3 times. One of them was a few years ago. I went back for the Notre Dame USC game and we spent 2 nights downtown Chicago, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then back in high school, I actually went with, I think it was, I think Sean. Shout out to Sean. Sean went, and it was really cool, dude. We went to a gas station downtown, and this guy had a hook for a hand.
I'm sure it was really cool for him too.
Yeah, I mean, he was just like doing. No, he wasn't doing like tricks, but like he had like he was like not juggling, but like doing stuff with it. I was like, that's pretty cool. Anyway, I just remember that. But yeah, I don't know. I've stayed downtown a couple times, and it's just always fun.
I also went to Garrett's Popcorn.
Oh, very good. Love Garrett's Popcorn. I think they might even have them. I at O'Hare. I think they have one in the actual airport, but it's nothing like getting it fresh right from the actual spot.
Yeah, dude,
did they still
it's
have
great
a big
because
line?
you walk up and there's the big line all the way down Michigan Avenue, and you're like, this is good.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed Chicago because I always do, and I don't know. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to go back there soon because I miss it. Now, granted, I would be decked out in White Sox stuff, so. Not sorry, CP, not Cubs stuff.
Well, I will tell you, I did when I got to O'Hare and had to Uber to my hotel, I asked the Uber driver.
Oh, dude, you're Ubering everywhere now. You're like
terrible.
You're a hip millennial now.
I just sold out on all my principles. So I get it. I go up to the first Uber, because you know how they have like the Uber line where like just Uber drivers show up because there's so many people. So
well, they finally solved that, which is great. I love it now because the Uber, like they used to just like wander around outside the airport, and then now it's like an actual line, so it's great. Sorry.
So I went up to the first guy and I was like, Cubs or White Sox? He's like, White Sox. I was like, I'll take the next one.
Nice. I mean, I gotta respect it because I would probably be like the same Cubs. I don't know how long we can stay in this car together.
Yeah, right. So
I'm not a Cubs fan, but no, I'm glad you had a great trip. Actually glad that the film festival went really well, and I am very sorry about your travel arrangements. I mean, I honestly, that guy taking $320 is, to me, that's like borderline robbery. And I know you can pay those guys off. Like they'll do this, like even the tow trucks. Like if they're like, nope, I can't unhook your car. We already hooked it up. It's done. And you're like, well, what if I give you $500? They're like, yep, we can unhook it. You're like, so you can do it. You just
mhm.
you're just an asshole.
Right.
Like, it bothers me. Like, why? Why would you do like that's just a mean thing to do?
No, that's
I
my
think.
thing. I'm like those literal, but I mean, think about it. Who wakes up and thinks I want to get a job at a tow lot where all I do is make people's day miserable?
Yeah, like I don't know. I think that what's wrong with just like being a nice person and helping you get your bag without having to take the cash? Like why is that wrong? Why do you got to
Right.
take the cash? Like why that's just a you're just a dick.
And again, and they're like, oh, well, it's policy. But I'm like, clearly, like, if you actually
It's
cared about
not though.
policy, you wouldn't violate policy. So it's not really policy. You're just a douche.
Yeah, right? Like that's why they and I don't know what it is about towing companies, but they're all like that. It's like they all get together at like some convention in Vegas and talk about how they can ruin people's lives.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Now
It's
we
just
need
very
to go find
frustrating.
out about this tow convention. This sounds like this could be fun.
We'll go undercover and make a documentary about it. That would be
Yeah.
an incredible doc. Like we could make a YouTube like documentary and premiere it, have a premiere night. I think that'd be incredible. All the secrets of
Mm,
the towing industry
I
on
like this.
display.
This might be smart, but oh, yeah. So I was not a fan. Anyway, very exciting weekend, very limited sleep. And dude, but when I got there on Saturday and finally sat down for that pizza, it was probably the best slice of pizza I've ever eaten.
Yes. And I honestly I think Lou Malnati's is the best. So
Oh, yeah.
CP, before we go on this episode, I did want to bring up something that it was a press release that came out and software that was released during our kind of summer hiatus. For anybody that didn't know, Apple has been upgrading all of their Macs and high-end iPads to Apple Silicon. They now have M series chips, which are incredibly fast. They literally
Incredibly
run
fast.
MacBook Pros, and they're quite impressive. One of the biggest knocks on the iPad Pro is that it's not very pro. People find that the software is really limited and they don't have a ton of pro apps. So Apple put out a press release that they were finally, at the request of pretty much every iPad Pro user in existence, releasing Final Cut Pro for the iPad Pro and Logic Pro for the iPad Pro. And to my knowledge, they were supposed to be full functioning versions of Final Cut and Logic Pro. Unlike, sometimes they kind of give like those kind of like pared down apps for the mobile because
Yeah.
they're running the M series chip. The pitch
It
from
has the
Apple was,
computing power of the
yeah,
actual MacBook.
to actually run Final Cut Pro and not like Final Cut Pro Lite or
Mhm.
like, basically iMovie, I guess. But that was really exciting for a lot of people. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of the different editing programs that are out there and which ones we like and a couple different things. But before we get into that, CP, I need your opinion while you're all heated about tow truck, robbery. How do you feel about the fact that for Final Cut Pro on the iPad Pro, you have to pay a $5 per month subscription fee to Apple? They have switched to the subscription model as opposed to either A, releasing it for free for iPad Pro users, which would have been great. I mean, that would have been really nice of them, or paying an outright fee, like maybe $50 or something. And then you just own a copy and you get updates. How do you feel about subscriptions? Like, does that
Well,
upset you or do you think it's fair? $5 doesn't sound like much. It's coffee.
first of all, let's take a step back. I
Okay.
think the introduction of Final Cut Pro on the iPad is awesome. If you recall, when the iPad was first released, Steve Jobs was really disheartened when one senior Apple employee said how the iPad was really good for consuming media, but it wasn't very good for creating media because Steve
Yes.
Jobs was always about creating technology that allowed people to create. So in this way, this is kind of a total tip of the cat to the deceased Steve Jobs that finally like we get it, and now you can do one of the major things people use the MacBook for is now available on the iPad. So I think that that's awesome from Apple. Now, I'm not a big fan of the subscription idea because it seems fundamentally un-Apple.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's kind of weird.
Apple always seemed like their business model was, we're building you technology, we are building you hardware that allows you to access the software. And some of the best software that Apple has created was natively free
Yeah, it's just
on
available.
Apple devices. And I think that this is really a shift away from the traditional Apple business model of, let's get people buying state of the art devices. That's how we make our money, because that's how they can keep creating content at the highest level possible. The subscription that they're introducing now makes it sound like they just want another means of collecting revenue. And I know it's $5 a month, but when you're selling software for 50, 100, $200, very quickly that $5 a month surpasses the cost of outright buy.
Yeah, and especially if you're, because I understand, like maybe if they had an option to outright buy it, or like what if it was, fairly pricey? It's like, oh, it's $100 to buy it, and you're like, I don't know if that's worth it, but I just need a copy. Or you pay $5 a month, right? Maybe if you just need the editing software here and there, you don't need it every day. You just pay the $5 when you need it, no problem. But if you're like a, power editor and you're using editing software for your job and you're using it every single day, you're like, well, $100 and I have, one of the best consumer level video editors you can get. That doesn't seem like a bad trade-off per se. They just didn't include that option to like buy it. They just gave the subscription, and I think everybody's like, oh my god, like we subscribe to all these streaming services, all this software, and it just gets old. You're like, another subscription.
Well, and the other thing that I think is really weird is, I'm assuming that there's a portion of people who are going to want to use Final Cut on their iPad who also own Final Cut for their MacBook. And it does not seem in any way they are considering those people. And they're pretty much just saying, yeah, buy it for your MacBook. You have to subscribe again for your iPad. And that's just the way it's going to be. As opposed to a lot of companies like Final Draft, for example, they will say, hey, you get multiple copies of this, you can install it in different things. Or, hey, if you want to buy the mobile version's really cheap and we're going to give you a discount because you've already purchased the full version of the software. So I think it's really weird that Apple seems so disinterested in helping out creators in this aspect.
Yeah, it was an interesting, that was one of the surprises from the press release. I think there was like all this elation, like everybody was so excited. They're like, Final Cut Pro is finally coming to the iPad. And then like, oh, and we have to subscribe to use it? Like, what? Even you think like most apps, like the Apple App Store model, like you buy the app, it's $2 or,
yeah,
$50. You buy the app. No, you gotta like get a subscription, a paid subscription. So you're like, huh. But while we're on the topic of editors, I kind of wanted to throw it over to you. I mean, which editing software do you like best? And I don't know, what do you think about all of the options that are available? Because there are, obviously there's other subscription models. There's some that are free. There's some that are strictly, you just pay for the app and then you have it. So I wondered, on that note, I mean, for instance, like iMovie just comes with your iPad and your iPhone and you can use it for free. Like you don't have to pay for it.
Well, my thought was, I think it's kind of interesting. We can take a little kind of trip down the history of editing software here.
Okay.
I think the first, I mean, obviously there is the era of actual cutting film together, right, in a film room, and
amazing.
And there's still people who can do that, and that is the ultimate like editing skill set, because film itself is such a sensitive medium, and it's not easy to just, not anyone can just walk in and start looking at film rules and cutting pieces together and grabbing scraps off the floor. Like, and I think every editor respects that and wish that they could. To my understanding, what I think was the first true digital editing software is Avid. That came out in 1987. And if you remember, when we were growing up, Avid was really the state of the art editing tool. In fact, I remember as a kid, when we did one of those like career days, I went to a television studio and I told them that I knew how to edit, because we had at our, we were fortunate that we went to a school that really pushed digital technologies,
which was really cool.
Learned to use Avid at Discovery Middle School. And they actually offered me a job on the
Shout
spot.
out.
They're like, if you know how to edit on Avid, then they're like, yeah, come down and we will, like, absolutely. Yeah,
That's
we need
dope.
people who can do it.
Because I remember, okay, I think this never actually got released in a consumer form, but I think I want to say at Lucasfilm, George Lucas had invented like Edit Droid,
Yeah.
and they may have experimented with it, but I don't think it ever got a commercial release. I think Avid was kind of the first commercial one.
Yeah. That, to my knowledge, Avid was.
Okay, major at least, yeah.
Mhm. And then in 1991, Adobe released the first version of Premiere.
Okay, wow,
But
1991 Premiere is
which
that old?
is insane to me. I had no idea that it was. I mean, like, we weren't even like using computers back in 1991.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember, like, what would a computer have looked like in 1991? I mean, I know what those old Macs looked like, and I mean, they weren't that powerful. And I mean, even you think about a Windows machine at that time. I mean, I remember playing at best like Star Wars games from floppy disks.
Well, and I'm
Like,
assuming that I mean, I'm not assuming. And this early version of Premiere was kind of like the early versions of Added, where you were really just editing on like VHS tapes, right?
yeah, yeah.
Hooked up to a computer, and it was taking the footage on one tape and recording it to the other tape, right? That's how we used to edit a long, long time ago.
I
Early
actually did
digital
that.
editing was kind of like a hybrid of analog and digital technologies.
Yeah, I had so I was experimenting with making movies even when I was a kid, and I actually had a VHS player at our house, like a separate one from the TV or the entertainment system. And then I had a TV that had a VHS player built in and had recording capabilities. So I would record things on a giant camera, the over the shoulder pack, like an
Yep.
actual
Yep.
VHS recorder, and then I could edit it. Like you said, you would send it over and then you would stop the record, you would rewind, you would go to where you wanted. And then it was weird because to do it on VHS, it was like you had to time the record, like when you
Yep.
would hit record. So like you'd have to like give yourself a buffer and then like you'd have to hit record right before you actually wanted that moment because it would take a sec for the tape to kick in. And if you could do it right, you could get it pretty close. I don't know, it's kind of fun. There was like great pride in watching back what you had made. You're like, wow, that was cool.
No, it was awesome. But it was much more sophisticated and difficult. I don't want to say sophisticated. It was much more challenging because, you had to have your stack of VCRs and a stack of VHS tapes, and that's how you edited once upon a time. And I feel like around 1999 was when things really started to change.
That was probably when they came out with the IMAX around then too,
And,
the like candy colored ones.
and we started using Firewire to connect
Yeah.
cameras directly to computers. But if you remember, you may or may not, but in 1999, iMovie was released, Final Cut Pro was released, and Vegas was released. And this really kind of opened up the world for video editing.
Definitely. And you have to remember too, it sounds silly now when we think about it, but I think 2005 was when YouTube came out.
Yeah.
And 2007 was when the iPhone came out. So that was kind of when that sort of that age of filmmaking and everything kind of went that way. But up until then, you were using maybe what, mini DV, Sony Handycams, if you're a consumer, one of those little handheld ones, and that was how you recorded your stuff. I don't even know if they had gone to digital yet.
Higher quality tapes that captured more footage and gave you a better quality image than, the old school big VHS tapes. And on top of it, I mean, you're right. We weren't shooting strictly, direct to digital at this point.
Well, and I think, like you said, with Firewire, what was really fascinating when you think back on it is like in order to digitize your DV footage, you would hook it up via Firewire to your camera. But what would happen is you'd actually digitally like record what you shot. So like if you shot 2 hours worth of footage, you had to let it run for 2 hours to make the digital file.
I remember how long it took to edit, and it was all just the imported footage. It was insane.
I do. And then that was back when, I mean, at least for casuals, you're still using like time codes and different things because you got to get it to line up. Where, I mean, now, like when you shoot things on your iPhone, like, I mean, you're not really like a casual person's not really using time codes, but
no, and now they have AI, machine learning software that matches time codes and all these things for you.
Yeah.
So much easier than it used to. You actually had to be aware of these things.
Yep. Crazy.
So
dude.
That was crazy because Final Cut was introduced. iMovie was introduced. And then in 2000, the worst editing software in the history of editing software, Windows Movie Maker, was released.
Thank you, Microsoft,
I
for
literally,
showing us what not to do.
like, Microsoft looked at what Apple was doing and they're like, great, there's this incredible professional level software being developed in Final Cut. There's this incredible consumer version that lets anybody suddenly edit in iMovie. Let's make the worst possible version of this, democratized consumer editor ever. And I think I tried to use it one time and literally would have sawed my own leg off, like in the Saw movie, then use it again.
Yeah, and I think that's how everybody thought of it. Like I always remember they had the photo editor too, which is much better now in the newer version of Windows. But like I remember wanting to edit photos, and like it didn't have like basic functionality for photo editing, and I was like, why can't Microsoft like go buy a company or something and just incorporate that into Windows? But like, how can you not have like basic photo editing functionality?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And so then in 2003, Adobe introduced Premiere Pro. And if you remember, kind of the two state of the art kind of competing softwares that professionals were using was either Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro.
Yeah.
And every year or two, it seemed like it changed in the industry which one was better and which one was second best. There was a weird contingency of people who were super into Vegas, which was purchased by Sony in, I think, 2004. So Sony suddenly got into this game, and there was still this weird group of hardcore traditional editors who preferred Avid, but I feel like Avid has slowly been on the decline over the last 30 years.
Well, I think even from a competitive place, I think Avid was fairly expensive compared to those other options at that time.
Right, which were readily accessible. I mean, if you remember,
Hey,
I
I
mean,
never did it, but you could find a free copy of Premiere out there somewhere.
yeah, and I remember computers at school when I was in high school all had Final Cut Pro on them, and in college, and you're like, why would I not take advantage of this great tool that's readily available?
Yeah.
I think what is interesting is the last two major developments I've seen is, and I did not realize this. So DaVinci Resolve was actually created in 2004. Now, it was acquired by Blackmagic in 2009, and it
Okay.
just blows my mind because I think now that is the leading editing software.
Well, what's
And
fascinating, going back to that subscription model for Final Cut Pro on the iPad Pro, when you look at DaVinci Resolve, that also is available on the iPad Pro for free.
for
And I
free.
believe DaVinci Resolve also just gives away that editing software for free. Now, granted, they have paid options for different things you can do with that software, but all the basic editing functionality and everything is there in the free version. It's actually quite incredible, and they just give it away.
And it's a great program. And if you're a professional editor who needs access to truly all of the power of this software in terms of converting all codex types and things like that, yeah, you need to buy the pro version. But for the rest of us,
It
you
works.
get incredible software at no charge.
It's pretty cool. And I mean, they have some of the best color grading in the game. It's amazing.
Right. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting is we've really seen the rise in recent years after the advent of YouTube and the iPhone and of mobile editing. And I still think that the best one in this space, and I think you'd agree with me, is probably LumaFusion, which was first released in 2017. And now I think is really the standard in kind of mobile editing.
Yeah, and their model is it's a paid app, so I think it's either $20 or $30, and essentially you get access to the full suite of LumaFusion, and I think it's like Luma Touch, and there's a couple other options, and then you get updates for free. So you just pay for the software and you get the updates, but it is still to this day, I think it's the leading software, even compared to Final Cut Pro, I believe, which obviously is probably working out the kinks and will surpass it at some point since it's got a lot of native capabilities that Apple can kind of unlock for that software.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that will happen eventually, but right now, I mean, I'm hearing from people and reading reviews and stuff, and LumaFusion is still like the go-to mobile editor.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I have it and I love it.
I mean, we'll see what happens with Apple. I think the moral of the story is this. I feel like in my mind, this is really a test case. kind of in the same way we talked about a couple weeks ago, streamers introducing ads. I think Apple's going to see how this goes. If there's still wide adoption of it, if there isn't a major backlash, I think they're going to say, great, we can do this with more of the software that we offer because it's an additional way to make a couple bucks on the side.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we?
Well, to all of our listeners and all of our, filmmaker listeners, let us know. What are your thoughts on, consumer level editing software and mobile editing software? Because there are a lot of options now, and especially even on devices like an iPhone or an iPad, tablets, things like that. There's a lot of ways that you can edit video now, and some of the best players in the game are making software across all the devices. So it's kind of a cool time to be an editor. And I don't know, I would just be curious if any of you guys have any stories of, editing movies or, putting together things from the past, like CP and I said, with VHS tapes, or, anybody out there worked with film. That'd be cool. I'd love to hear the story. Maybe we'll get you on the show and have you tell a story. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
So, all right, CP. Well, that does it for our episode this week. I just wanted to say to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. You can follow everything Filmmakers Compass at filmmakerscompass.com, where we have a feed of all of the episodes and our content, as well as all the links to our social media channels, which you can follow at Film Comp Podcast. Or Film Comp Pod, depending on how long they allow us to do it. You can follow me at Big Kid Dman, and you can follow CP
at NDCal5. Thanks for hanging out and listening to this week's episode of Filmmakers Compass Podcast. We hope that you will be back here next week for the next episode. And until then, keep watching movies.